Welcome to the Lifestyle Recovery Education Program. This is Learning Module 3 of 5, Nutrition for Brain Health. In this third course of the 5-part series, we are designing this workshop to support those living a divided life and are really looking for a way to feel whole again. Any individual seeking personal transformation, including those navigating trauma or chronic stress, are more than welcome to take this workshop. Personal transformation is often hindered because there are critical areas of life that shape our growth, and these areas are often overlooked. And without addressing these areas, it is quite difficult to find meaning and live a purposeful life. Therefore, this program guides individuals through the following areas. These include readiness for change, timeline development, nutrition for brain health, spiritual nutrition, and the success formula. So, what is nutrition for brain health all about? In this module, we discuss the neurological health because your brain is the control center for your thoughts, emotions, and choices. When the brain is stressed, it becomes undernourished, struggling to synthesize adequate neurotransmitters and unable to send clear electrical signals. This makes it tough to physically heal, harder to think clearly, and more difficult to connect with your greatest self. This module will show you how stress affects the brain, major parts of the brain and what they do, how electrical activity and energy are used in the brain, why nutrition is necessary for brain health, and how feeding your brain certain foods helps you improve thought, focus, and awareness, facilitates meditation practices for individual and spiritual alignment, and improves your capability to learn and maintain memory. So, what qualifies me? Well, I am Dr. Jasmine Hollywood. I am the founder of True Paleo Inc. and the editor in chief of the Journal of Integrative Nutrition. I have many peer publications, but specifically 4 peer-reviewed case reports on lifestyle recovery and trauma. So I know exactly what it's like to have to get my life in order and make successful changes, both on the clinician side and the patient side. I have a doctor of clinical nutrition and I am a PhD holder in spiritual philosophy. So, across the nation, I'm a board certified nutrition specialist, and in the state of Florida, I'm a licensed dietitian nutritionist. I'm also a certified ordained minister and a certified recovery peer specialist. So, my personal experience spans over 17 years, with 11 of them in educational training and specifically nutrition and integrative health methods. So let us start with understanding how stress affects the brain. So, how does stress occur? Well, stress responses occur when the brain perceives any physical or psychological stimuli that disrupts its homeostasis. And what I mean by that is the balance of the brain, right? So the result is the activation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, also known as the HPA axis, the sympathetic nervous system, or we like to call the SNS, and it contributes to the production of corticotropin releasing hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, cortisol, and adrenaline. And what needs to be understood right from the start is that these are important stress hormones. And you can see here a diagram of the inner part of the brain and where these hormones come from, which glands produce these hormones. The fight and flight activation. So the stress response is an adaptive response, preparing humans to handle any kind of challenge. However, when someone is facing trauma or extreme amounts of stress, and this could just be literally from sitting in a chair the wrong way, okay? Some immediate effects start to happen. And so, when trauma and stress occur due to an immediate, unexpected challenge, the brain actually goes into what we consider a fight or flight mode, which is a non adaptive mode. The fight or flight response is the body's basic instinct to protect itself to avoid death and or danger. During fight or flight, the brain will quickly learn and identify warning signs that precede the threat. It gathers information about the environment, the sequence of events, and the associated emotions. It also allows our bodies to release increased quantities of adrenaline to increase breathing rate, heart rate, blood pressure, and mental alertness to aid in this self protection. If chronic stress persists for prolonged periods of time, this puts the brain into overdrive, affecting it in several direct and cascading ways. So, stress can cause nutrient depletion, structural and chemicals changes, neurotransmission dysfunction. Nutrient depletion, during stress episodes, particularly, increased amounts of water, minerals, vitamins, glucose, proteins, and fats are mobilized and then they are utilized to provide quick energy sources for muscle contraction, preparing us to either fight back or flee in a potentially dangerous or stressful situation. Ultimately, chronic stress imposes nutrient deficits, changing how the brain functions and driving the body to exhaustion, making it harder to think clearly, tougher to stay physically fit, tougher to heal physically, and more difficult to connect with your greatest self. Feeding your brain certain foods helps you improve thought, focus, and awareness. Facilitate meditation practices for spiritual alignment, and improve capability to learn and maintain memory. The different types of stress are external stressors and internal stressors. For external stressors, these come from the outside environment or events, such as acute stress, short term fight or flight response; chronic stress, long lasting stress raises risk for disease, anxiety, and depression; episodic acute stress, repeated short term stress episodes, chaotic lifestyles, constant pressure; traumatic stress, from traumatic events like violence or disaster or abuse, and this can lead to PTSD. Environmental stress, from your surroundings, noise, pollution, unsafe housing, or other external issues. Internal stressors arise from within the body or mind, and these can be psychological stress from our thoughts and our worries, and physiological stress from body strain, illness, injury, poor sleep, poor nutrition. So, let's take a look at the addiction cycle here just for a moment. So, when stress changes the brain, it affects parts of the brain that regulate our memory, our decision making processes, our awareness, our focus, and our thoughts. This is very common for people who are exposed to trauma, abuse, homelessness, different types of crisis, and especially those who are spiritually misaligned. So it starts off as an addiction, usually because we have a mental or a physical stress. And so we will do something to try to cope with that stress, such as drink. Okay, this is probably the most simplest, easiest example to use. So this is the one I will go with. So I've had a stressful mental day at work. I'm going to go out and have something to eat because I'm too stressed out to cook at home. And on my way there, I say, you know what? I'll probably have a cocktail too. I get to the restaurant, I have a couple cocktails. After a while of this type of behavior, some things start to happen in the brain. So when we become addicted to a substance, regardless of what that is, it can be a food, a drink, a drug, whatever. We become stimulated by it. And when that happens, we have dopamine release. And when we release dopamine, that signals the hypothalamus to release CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone. And that will signal the pituitary gland to release the adrenocorticotropin hormone from the adrenals. And that alone can cause physical stress on top of the already physical stress we may be feeling or mental stress. When this activates the adrenal cortex, cortisol is also released, and that will release acetylcholine in the brain, in your SNS or sympathetic nervous system. Release more adrenaline and from the adrenal medulla, and then this is what sets off this fight or flight response to increase or resist. Okay. And so, why? Because it tells our body, oh, adrenaline, something is occurring. I need to hurry up and release nutrients and speed up my heart rate. Do this, do that. And so, if you're ever just sitting somewhere and you're stressed out, sometimes you can feel like a pain and you'll feel your blood pulsing. That is because you're so stressed out that your adrenaline is literally triggering and you're increasing your blood pressure. And that's how people literally can get high blood pressure from being stressed out. Okay, and that releases nutrients in order to do that process. But when we release these nutrients, if we don't put the right nutrients back into the body to support that, excuse me, then we can deplete the body and add more physical stress. Okay. And so this is when triggers occur and we start to crave things like more alcohol or other substances. And then once we drink it or do it again, the cycle starts back over and it's just a never ending cycle. So let's talk a little bit here about the brain. There are some key brain structures and mechanisms involved in processing trauma and stress. And so it's very important that we just review these couple things before moving on with the workshop. And there may be some wording that may appear to be advanced. And that's okay because everything here is explained in the PowerPoint slide. You'll understand it if you don't. So the major parts of the brain are listed here and shown on the diagram. These are key brain structures and mechanisms involved in processing trauma or stress. These areas are related to impulse control when we're eating and reward-based decisions when considering lifestyle changes. The cingulate gyrus, as shown on the diagram, regulates the formation of our emotions, processing, learning, and memory. The amygdala is involved in the processing of emotions such as fear or anxiety, amongst others, and memory imprints, as well as nightmares that people may experience from like PTSD. And some behavior responses to fear include immediate or innate fear and learned fear. We also have the hippocampus, and that is involved in forming and retrieving memories and blackouts. So, some people also experience blackouts with PTSD or severe stress. And so, while all of these areas can kind of cross overlap with some of the things that they control, it's very clear to understand where the majority of um, these things are occurring in the body, or the majority of the organs that are controlling these things in the body. And then we have the prefrontal cortex in the beginning of our brain area where the forehead is. And that's really going to be responsible for higher order cognitive functions, such as your decision making, the impulse control, like, oh, you know what, I'm going to buy a piece of chocolate today, or regulating your emotions as well. Now, we also have the pituitary gland, and that is really going to control some hormones such as the APA axis, and regulate the body's stress response, such as cortisol. We have the brain stem, and that's really going to consist of the midbrain, the medulla, and the pons, which controls our basic life functions, such as breathing and heart rate and consciousness. Now, the most commonly known stress condition is PTSD. And in PTSD, it results in increased brain activity in the amygdala and reduced hippocampal volume and decreased connectivity in the prefrontal cortex. And this is important to understand because PTSD obviously occurs from stress. Okay? And so people who are experiencing complex PTSD have far more severe changes in the brain. And complex PTSD is described as adverse childhood events and prolonged negative life events. Okay, so basically, negative events in your life that are prolonged for such a long period of time that it's actually impeded on your stability process in life. And so these repeated prolonged exposures basically trigger stress all the time, and it becomes very toxic to the body because of all the chemical reactions going on, and it leads to dysregulation of the brain's mechanisms and organs, or areas, or glands and things like that in the brain. So you'll have a dysregulated amygdala, hippocampus, or the prefrontal cortex may misfire. The HPA axis may be producing hormones based on the feedback mechanisms. Okay. So now, when we speak of neurobiochemistry of brain cells, we have to understand that in the brain, we have many different types of cells that work together in organized patterns so that each part contributes to the function of the entire organ. Okay, and I may have misspoke back there when I said organs in the brain, but the brain is one organ, and then there's many glands and functions in the brain. So the brain has neurons, and these are nerve cells that send and receive signals. They also have neuroglia, which are cells that provide structure in the brain. Neural cell membrane structures are membranes that separate the cells from their environments, and membrane proteins are going to facilitate entry and exit from the cell itself. So now we are going to briefly discuss the electrical activity of the brain. And this, again, is a little deep, but you are going to need to really understand these mechanisms to understand why the foods that are suggested for brain health. So the brain works like a biological antenna. It uses ion currents and electrical signals that will send, receive, and process information. Okay. These are powered by energy flow facilitated by sodium, potassium, calcium, and chloride pumps. Basically, ion gradients are creating a voltage difference across your cell membranes, kind of like the electrical charge separation in an antenna wire. And the pumps restore and maintain these gradients, keeping neurons ready to receive and send signals rapidly, similar to how an antenna maintains its ability to pick up or broadcast TV waves. Okay. So, inside a stressed brain, however, these cells are going to fire more often or even fire the wrong way, which uses up more energy on top of what's going on in the body because of the stress hormones. So now you have all of the stress hormones that we talked about earlier that are causing nutrient increases, and you have the cells firing the wrong way. So, energy metabolism for the brain. So, we have carbohydrates, and this is going to provide brain energy. And brain energy is mostly used for electrical conduction for nerve activity. Energy in the brain depends heavily on carbohydrates. And then we have lipids and fats. We have something called pyruvate dehydrogenase, or PDH. And this is another enzyme that is going to help convert pyruvate into something we called acetyl-CoA. And this is the key constituent for energy. And so, if pyruvate enzymes are low, ketones can fuel the brain during ketosis. And genetic energy conditions can be improved by just increasing ketones. Brain electrical activity and stress. So, stress redirects energy toward fight or flight, reducing the energy for these ion pumps. So, we have all of the chemical reactions going on from the hormones, and we have the misfiring going on. And because we need more energy for these pumps and they're already misfiring, they are now also getting a reduced amount of energy because the body is taking it away to support all of the hormonal stuff that is occurring. Okay, and so this is going to continue to disrupt electrical signaling, which is going to affect your thoughts, your focus, and your awareness, preventing you from really being able to meditate and even think clearly. And so, healthy electrical signaling, or what we like to call smooth synaptic transmissions, are going to help us think clearly, focus better, and maintain awareness. Electrical currents involved in ion driving and signaling are primarily regulated by amino acids. So, when we think about external signaling, we have the following amino acids involved, which are tryptophan, glutamate, aspartate, GABA, and glycine. And internal signaling, we have serine and threonine and tyrosine. But it is good for me to note that all of your amino acids are always being used, whether we're talking about external or internal signaling. Just some play a more important role in one or the other. So in this section, we are now going to connect what we just learned about hormones and brain electricity, and we are going to see how it involves nutrients and what we eat. So a diet deficient in adequate nutrition can influence neurotransmitter concentrations and their associated behaviors. Vitamins and minerals and amino acids really help regulate the nerves that we have and the signaling, along with the hormones that are being produced in the brain as well. So they're going to regulate normal nerve activity and protect against oxidative stress. So oxidative stress is when we have a lot of oxidation going on in the body and a lot of decaying matter or molecules. And we all know what decay means. It means like dying out, decaying. So let's start with the amino acids. So phenylalanine is an amino acid that will build up in the brain at times and cause an intellectual disability. Tryptophan is used to treat depression and pain sensory, while tyrosine reduces blood pressure and helps with hippocampus activity. Carnitine is derived from the amino acids lysine and methionine, and that's going to help protect against age-related degeneration. Choline is a non-essential vitamin used as a precursor to form acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that improves memory, learning, and cognitive function. Vitamins. So we'll start with the B complex. So thiamine, vitamin B1, if you're deficient in it, that will literally cause a condition called dry beriberi. But the problem with this condition is that it also comes with severe neurological problems and memory loss. Niacin, or vitamin B3 deficit, can lead to pellagra, which in this condition is the primary symptom for dementia, which is loss of memory and thinking. Pantothenic acid, vitamin B5 deficit, can lead to adrenal failure and peripheral nerve damage. Paroxetine or vitamin B6 can lead to risk and epileptic type seizures, delayed neuronal recovery, and alterations in other important amino acids needed for brain health. Folic acid or vitamin B9 is needed for nervous system function and development. And a deficiency in this can lead to altering your glutamate metabolism. Vitamin B12 or cobalamin deficiency can lead to deterioration of the spinal cord and the nerves, leading to tingling and loss of vibratory sensations, and cognitive and psychiatric symptoms. Vitamin C or ascorbic acid deficit in neural tissues particularly can lead to oxidative damage and brain degeneration, while vitamin E deficit can lead to oxidative stress, making younger brains age faster. Copper deficits can lead to neurological degeneration and mental retardation, while an excess in copper can lead to depression. Iodine deficit can lead to severe neurodevelopmental disorders by altering your neuronal and dendritic growth. Zinc deficit can lead to altered emotions, deficits in learning, attention, and memory, while an excess of zinc can lead to enhanced neuronal firing, which can also be detrimental. The essential fatty acids, omega-3 and 6, are very important to understand as well. A deficiency in omega-3 can lead to learning impairments, while a deficiency of both omega-6 and omega-3 can lead to long-term learning impairments. Saturated fatty acids, which only come from animal sources or coconuts, a diet high in these but not plant fats, can lead to a decreased brain function and integrity. So as you can see here, a variety of nutrients across vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids and amino acids can lead to memory problems, degeneration of the brain, oxidative stress, nerve problems, neurological problems, retardation, misfiring, and other things. So now we'll talk about nutrition for brain health. So we have taken all of the nutrients that we have just reviewed and we have found the foods that have the highest amounts according to the USDA Food Database Central. And these were retrieved from the federal government, who bases their list on clinical and scientific research. And as you can see from the charts, the major food types involved in supporting brain health are literally legumes or beans, seeds, and animal foods. And so here in blue is plants. So, for example, for legumes, the highest things are going to be black beans and black eyed peas and moth beans, mung beans, green peas, peanuts, pigeon peas, pinto beans, soybeans, and winged beans. So if you're trying to get the nutrients for brain health that we just spoke about that are going to help with these processes, these are going to be the primary beans that you eat. Now, they're available in all beans, but these are going to have the highest amounts of those specific nutrients. And of course, other vegetables are artichokes and chili peppers, onions, sweet peppers, and spinach. And then there's a wide variety of animal meats that you can eat as well, including beef from various cuts, elk, some game such as bear, beaver, and caribou if you're a hunter, lamb, different cuts, and veal. If you are a pescatarian or a fish only eater, you can also get some of these nutrients from mackerel, salmon, yellowfin tuna, and swordfish. For seeds, the ones with the highest amount of nutrients that come from our list are going to be bread nut, hemp, flax seeds, pumpkin and squash seeds, safflower seeds, sesame seeds, sesame seeds, or like what we like to call mustard seeds, sunflower seeds, and watermelon seeds. You can also eat oats, and you can also have sorghum bran. If you're a mushroom eater, you can have portobellos and mai tai and shiitake. And so those are the common ones in stores in America. Nuts, we'll have Brazilian nuts. They're not too common, but you can get them, as well as coconut meat, pistachios, and wasabi. We also have some poultry here, so you can get your nutrients from chicken breast, eggs, emu, and turkey. For fruits, you can get them from cherries and currants, guava, and sapote. And of course, herbs have some of the highest amounts, believe it or not, because they are dried. And so only thing that's left in these are the nutrients. So we have all kinds of herbs. So I implore you to definitely use them when you're cooking. But we have bay leaf and basil, black pepper, cayenne pepper, chervil, coriander, dill, mace, paprika, parsley, rosemary, sage, spearmint, tarragon, and turmeric. So let's wrap it up here. To improve your ability to really make your lifestyle changes that we talked about in the first and second modules, you really need to enhance your neurological health, right? And this means eating healthy nutritionally for brain health, right? Because it impacts these processes. Okay, when we're under extreme stress, it's very difficult for us to make decisions and learn things, remember things, and have overall good functioning cognitive abilities. And so, what we want to do is make sure we're eating for brain health so we can have improved focus, thinking, and awareness. This can simply be achieved by just avoiding ultra processed foods, refined foods, and domesticated foods like alcohol, caffeine, sugar, dairy, wheat, etc. Okay. And so, especially genetically modified wheat. But we want to remember that it's not just about eating healthy things, it's also about removing the unhealthy things. and understanding that when we're stressed out or experiencing trauma, these things are occurring, and it's just harder for us to maintain the life we have or make changes for a new life that we want. And so, a simplified food list of everything that we went over is really going to be which ideal foods are going to be necessary for supporting brain functions of individuals with stress or trauma. And these are going to be quite simply fish, like tilapia, trout, red snapper, grouper, salmon, or tuna, and land animals like game, cows, poultry, okay? And plant foods are going to be leafy greens, onions, peppers, herbs and spices, peas, beans, lentils, and pulses, fruits and grains, dependent on the season, seeds, nuts, coconuts, and olives, and mushrooms. True Paleo Inc. wants to thank you for your interest in using our self-directed Discover Your Greatest Self programs for your lifestyle and nutritional needs. The food expert you can trust, Dr. Hollywood. Please reach out to our website if you want to learn more by using the QR code here at www.truepaleoinc.org. You can contact us at info@truepaleoinc.org. That's one R, not two. And please share on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and other social media platforms. Here are my references for the material that I've cited, my scientific evidence. And thank you so much.